Hello and welcome to this very special interview. We are keeping the lens on fintechs. And here is a very interesting fintech founded by someone who has a wide range of experience. He's been with the big consultancy firms, and then he's taken the leap of faith into the startup world, been associated with a few startups. And his latest venture is a interesting venture about enhancing, making cross-border payments for small businesses or professionals more simpler, more convenient. That's the problem that he's seeking to solve. Joining me is Srivatsan Sridhar, who is the founder and CEO at Skydo. Thank you very much, Srivatsan. Pleasure talking to you. My first question, as I mentioned very briefly, but would love to understand from you, what is the problem that you are seeking to solve that continues to remain despite so many banking channels available for cross-border payments?
Yeah, thanks, Vivek, for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here as well. So I'll start my answer by saying that, while there are lots of options for people to bring money into, their bank accounts for their businesses, there is a lot of confusion and clutter. And most often, the solutions that are available are not solving for the exporter. They are either solving for the importer in terms of the fact that it makes it easy for them to pay out, which is what a PayPal or a Stripe does, right? It allows an importer or a payer to make payments from multiple payment modes in a very simple and effective manner. But in the process, loads on the cost to the receiver. Or it's inconvenient to both, which is the traditional banking system, where you send money into a black box, and then from the black box the receiver receives the money, and there is hardly any control on timeline, control on cost, and there is no single entity controlling the experience in this entire process. So what we thought of was deriving from my own experience as an exporter when I was running my family owned business for a few years. We realized that there is one gap, which is nobody is solving this from the receiver's point of view. So how can we make life easy for an exporter where already there are lots of hurdles to surmount? Payments should not be one of them. It should be just as easy as getting a domestic payment. So how can we make an international payment as simple and cost effective, as well as convenient as a domestic payment, or in today's parlance, an UPI payment, is how the vision came into our mind, and that's what we are attempting to solve here.
And how are you using technology, or how are you using and how are you seeking to do this? What is it that you bring to the table, which a bank doesn't, for example? I completely agree with you. I mean, if one receives any payment, you don't even sometimes know who the sender is. You'll have a mail from the bank saying, please verify that you have actually got this, or you're going to be receiving this money. So, I mean, as a simple user, not an exporter, but, it's very true what you're saying, that there seems to be some work done. But how are you enabling that experience?
Yeah, so at the heart of what we're doing is a simple, realization that different countries' domestic payment methods are, distinct for various reasons. And therefore, somebody needs to play an orchestration layer in stitching these together. And that's the first thing that we do. So we try to, provide local collection, collection facilities for our exporters in different large markets. And now we have started providing this in most of the major currencies. Obviously, over time as we grow, we'll keep providing these local collection options in more and more geographies. But common currencies like the US dollar, the euro, the GBP, and Canadian dollar, and so on, where most of our Indian exports are reaching. These currencies, we've provided ability of our exporters to receive this money in local currency in those markets. So which means it's a simple domestic payment for the sender. Then we have from there interconnected that with the Indian local system of clearance, which is the NEFT or RTGS, where as soon as the money lands in our partner bank, from the overseas bank. We then, facilitate seamless local transfer out into the exporter's account. So this is the first layer of work that we have done, and we call these infrastructure or rails, right? So our business is composed of three parts. The first is a rail, which is how can we connect as many local systems as possible and then connect them to each other through us playing an orchestration layer, so that the information originating in a local system in one country is seamlessly passed on to the local system in another country, so that these entities, even though they don't talk to each other, are talking to each other through Skydo as the orchestrator. That's the rail. On top of these rails, and the reason why local is important is because then it makes it near free or almost free, right? Because a local payment for us doesn't cost anything. Similarly, a local payment in most countries costs nothing to a very, very small amount. Whereas an international payment has multiple correspondent banks and there are lots of charges, sometimes quite arbitrary and unpredictable. So that's what is getting eliminated. The second layer is a product layer, which is what does a customer want? What does a small exporter want? A small exporter does not want complicated systems and real-time payments and so on. A small exporter really wants proof of payment immediately, so that he or she is comfortable that yes, I did some work and raised an invoice and I got my money. And second is they want to know how much they received and what invoice is it against and so on. So this entire accounts receivable management that we call is part of the product. And again, we are one of the few payment companies which actually thinks about payment as not just money transfer, but money and information transfer. And that's critical because these two things put together really makes the life of a small business easy. And in this product layer of accounts receivable management, where I'm not only bringing an exporter their money, but I'm also telling them which invoice is it against, and who sent you, what was the currency at this time, exchange, currency exchange at this time, and how much charges you got deducted, and so on. So this transparency and this invoice mapping, etc., makes it a lot easier for this exporter to reconcile their payments and not then focus on this. So here a lot of tech is involved. So there are some AI tools that we use, some created by us and some off-the-shelf products that help us to read an invoice, parse an invoice, and identify the right elements of the invoice. Then once a payment comes in, we have a matching algorithm that actually matches it against open invoices to know which is the most likely invoice it is to be mapped against, and then present all of this in a very simple and easy way for an exporter to consume. We also provided very convenient ways for the exporter to download these as spreadsheets, download payments from to a particular date range and so on. So all of this makes it easy for them to reconcile their month-end statements, quarter-end statements, send this to their chartered accountant for filing and so on. So that's how we have thought about this from a rail and a product point of view.
When you say exporter or business, are you looking purely at people who are exporting products and are companies, or are you also looking at individuals? I mean, today, there are a large number of individuals based in India who are providing services online to global markets and are therefore receiving payments. So is this beneficial or applicable to them as well, or it's only for a certain threshold of companies who are exporting goods?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I think India is, as everybody knows well, the freelancing capital of the world right now.
Absolutely.
Services from content writing to video production to digital marketing, coding, machine learning, teaching. So many fields, Indian freelancers and sole proprietors are actually doing business with global entities as well as global individuals. So we are really here about consolidating the long tail and helping the small business be able to manage this sea of complication in a simple manner. So in fact, our primary customers are these small services exporters. They may be freelancers, they may be sole proprietors, they may be companies registered with anywhere up to 100 employees in their company. But these are our core segments that we are trying to help. We also help manufacturing exporters, but within manufacturing, we also look for specific niches where our help is most valuable, which is, people exporting on e-commerce platforms, people who are actually small handicrafts exporters and garment exporters and other niche exporters who are small, fast growing, are using platforms to expand their distribution, and are therefore facing complicated payment challenges. The really large goods exporters, etc., do not really need our help because they have good finance teams. They have been working with the same set of importers for a long time, so their business is very stable and predictable. So there, in fact, the ability of Skydo to add incremental value is lower. Where Skydo really adds value is for the small person who's growing fast and who is really using the currently globalizing world for offering their products and services everywhere.
That's interesting because even the larger people are anyway pampered by the banks, isn't it?
That's
so, it's really the smaller people who get turned away or not much attention is given to them. When you talk about, managing the documentation, managing, the invoice, etc., does that also help an individual? Because one of the issues, at least that I've seen with a lot of young entrepreneurs, I'm not talking about big companies, but small young entrepreneurs, is that who may have just started a consulting service somewhere, is that, how do I manage my GST? How do I manage XYZ? While, of course, in India, we are way ahead of many other jurisdictions in the whole digital infrastructure space. But from a person's point of view, there is still that fear that, it's complicated. What if I get it wrong? What if I'm receiving money from abroad? Is it okay? Do I need another license, etc., etc.? So do you take care of all of that as well?
Yeah, so we do this in two ways. One, when somebody signs up on Skydo, they can now do everything from raising an invoice, and we also are e-invoicing enabled, which means that if somebody is going to be above the 5 CR per annum threshold, then they have to necessarily raise a e-invoice, and this threshold has come down from 25 crores to 5 crores in various steps, and is likely to go all the way down to 50 lakhs. So very soon, in a couple of years maybe, everybody who's doing even a reasonable business is actually going to have to raise an e-invoice. So our systems are e-invoicing compliant. So somebody can come into Skydo and raise an invoice in a few simple steps. And it's a beautiful invoice with your logo and everything, and you don't have to pay for this software. It's just part of the payments platform. This invoice also allows you to then use the right Skydo account, embed it into the invoice itself, so that you don't make a mistake of choosing a Euro account for a US customer, for example. Right, so the invoice automatically picks the right account number based on the country code of the customer you're adding. Then we actually have a payment reminder system. So you can automatically set reminders to your customer to pay you, and it's a lot less personal and offensive for a system to remind someone to pay, rather than you actually WhatsApping or emailing or calling and saying hey, can you make the payment? So a lot of customers who are using our platform now like this payment reminder option. Then once the payments come in, we obviously give them the tracking, as well as we provide them the foreign inward remittance advice, which is a very important document for exporters to have, because that's the proof that you actually got this payment for a legitimate business service or a product. And it's important for your tax filing. It's important for claiming any subsidies that you may be applicable or you may be eligible for. And finally, we also provide all of this information in an easily downloadable format, like I said earlier. This is one way. So our workflow is itself, compliant with GST as well as, foreign inward remittance guidelines. So that's the one way in which we help new exporters. The second way in which we help is we have a, very rich blog section, on skydo.com, where we actually talk about each and every one of these topics. So there are articles that talk about, how do you incorporate? I'm a freelancer. Do I even need to incorporate? Can I just not get money into my savings account? If I, I'm a remote worker working for a company globally, and I get my, payment from this company every month in foreign currency, should I be getting this as a service, provider or a contractor, or should I be getting this payment as an employee? What are the pros and cons? What tax forms can I fill? And various such questions have been answered in our blog in a very comprehensive manner. We also provide CA, CPA, ask me anything service. So a lot of customers also, keep asking us through our support channels, these questions, and we don't charge anything for answering them through, a CA and a CPA who are associated with our company, who can answer this both from an India tax perspective and a global tax perspective. So these are the 2-3 ways in which we actually try to help customers on these, what you rightly said, complicated topics for new entrepreneurs.
One final question, Srivatsan, which is what about the cost? Of course, one is that a bank will not turn you away, so of course they will allow you to use the service, and there is whatever the complications. But what about on the cost side? How do you, or by how much have you brought it down for an individual?
Yeah, no, I always believe that, people will give you one opportunity. At that one opportunity, you will have to be, obviously better than their current offering in terms of features and convenience, etc. But people will not pay you more for that. People will actually say, yes, great that you are making my life simpler, but I also want it to be cheaper, because otherwise there is no point. Why will I switch? I will rather live with existing problems than adopt a new solution and come into new problems. So that's something that we were clear on from day one when we started the company. So the whole point of, when I said about the rails earlier, the whole point of connecting local rails on both sides is to make the payments cheaper. So we've actually been able to dramatically reduce the cost of a payment. And what we now offer customers is a flat fee model, where for up to $2,000 of payment, we charge a $19 flat fee, zero sending fee, receiving fee, processing fee, documentation fee, everything is zero. Similarly, we do not charge an FX markup. This is very important, because I think in the market today, we are the only company that can genuinely say this and also, be true to it. What usually every platform does or bank does is they charge a markup on top of the mid-market rate that is prevailing at a particular point of time. Whereas what we do is, whatever mid-market rate is live at the time the dollar is getting converted to INR, we record that timestamp, we record the exact mid-market rate, and we put it on your invoice, and we tell you that this was the mid-market rate, and you got $5,000 multiplied by the exact mid-market rate into your account. So this transparency actually is one of the things that really customers have actually been happy with us about, because they now know that whatever was the rate, they got it. They did not actually pay me a 30 paise, 50 paise, 1 rupee markup on top of that. So that's what we offer. Our charge is a $19 flat for up to $2,000, and our charge is a $29 flat for any transaction from $2,000 up to $10,000. Right. And since we are serving the small exporter today, we do not typically see invoices greater than $10,000. Mostly our invoices are within this, an individual invoice. So if you look at this now, for every price range, whether it's a $2,000 invoice or a $5,000 invoice or a $10,000 invoice, we would be by far the cheapest option in the market compared to a PayPal or a Stripe, which would be probably at 8-9% of total cost, including their fees, markup, and everything, to a bank which is around 2-2.5%, because they actually have a 1-1.5% FX markup, and then there are some fixed fees. Then there is a SWIFT fee that you incur on the sending side, which nobody has control of, and so on. So I think we are anywhere between 1% to 0.29%, depending on what your ticket size is, because of our flat fee structure. And we've seen that we are by far the cheapest on the market at this point.
Wonderful talking to you, Srivatsan. I wish you all the very best. You're trying to solve a very significant problem for a lot of individuals. And as you rightly said, we are the freelancer capital. It's not just products. There's a host of services that we Indians sitting at home here are able to provide, and to be able to get remunerated for it in an easy way, cost-effective way. I wish you all the very best, and I look forward to many more such conversations with you.
Thank you, Vivek. It was a pleasure actually sharing our journey with you. And like I said, the real objective for us is to make exporters not fear exporting, and be very confident and bold, and really make Indian products and services go globally. So in fact, our blog is called Growing Global, and I would request everybody to check it out because there's lots of useful stuff there. Even if you're not using Skydo for your payments, I think there's a wealth of information there on various things that are useful for a small business. Look forward to more such interactions, and thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, Srivatsan. Thank you.